After reading the last issue of Absolute Martian Manhunter, I thought I knew exactly where this series was going and what it was saying. Nothing matters, therefore everything matters. The only rules we follow are the ones we impose on ourselves. But after reading Absolute Martian Manhunter 11, I really don't know what's going on anymore. I suppose that shouldn't be too surprising for a psychedelic series that has been getting more and more strange as it progresses. The early issues seem quite quaint by this point. FBI agent John Jones had been caught in an attack on a coffee shop, and he was the only survivor. He had been saved by the Martian, an interdimensional entity that came with a proposal. Together, the two would investigate the tide of violence sweeping through the town of Middleton. Along the way, they'd find that anyone could turn, not just the usual suspects, because they'd fall under the influence of the White Martian, an agent of Darkseid who clouds people's minds with anti-life. Eventually, the Martian defeated the White Martian, but you can't kill an idea. Instead, the White Martian retreated inside of Jones's mute son Tyler, and he has been orchestrating things ever since. He was responsible for his parents' separation. Using the smoke of bad ideas, he persuaded his mother to separate from Jones. This left him vulnerable and open to the arrival of Despair the Zero through the cracks in his life. Despair the Zero became Jones's new partner, and he can always see the darkness in any situation. At the same time, the war against the White Martian caught the attention of the Agency, a metaphysical government group tasked with distracting the public with fake alien conspiracy stories to prevent them from seeing the real conspiracies going on. They tracked down the Martian, captured him, and cut him open to examine his innards. And while Jones was alone, he was left at the mercy of Despair the Zero, the personification of that negative little voice in the back of your mind, telling you that all of your worst fears are true. In the last issue, Jones, while under siege from the Agency, had an epiphany though. A small fragment of the Martian made its way to him, and he swallowed it. This allowed him to see that we are all nothing. Therefore, we are all as important as each other. The rules of the universe only apply to us because we accept them. By discarding the rules, he was able to travel the metaphysical highway to rescue the Martian from the Agency. And it really seemed like he had reconciled the parts of himself, John Jones, the Martian, and Despair the Zero, and was heading out to rescue his family. Well, that kind of is true, but not quite. Yes, Jones carries the Martian and Despair the Zero inside of him, but they're not in harmony at all. And actually, while the Martian tries to deal with the Agency, Jones succumbs to despair. Given that this is the penultimate issue, I was absolutely certain that all of the conflict with the Agency was past us, and that this issue would see a conflict with the White Martian, but that doesn't happen. Instead, Despair the Zero talks Jones through his memories and makes some rather startling revelations. You'll recall how the series had implied that Jones was caught in that explosion because he had been investigating a terror suspect who blew himself up in the coffee shop. This is the point that the Martian made himself known and proposed their partnership, right? Well, Despair the Zero points out how unlikely that would be, and how people have always called Jones a Martian because he was distant and seemed like he was elsewhere. That's not just a personality trait or undiagnosed neurodivergence. He says that the Martian has been with him his entire life, shaping events since he was born. That explosion in the coffee shop was scripted, and Jones had no idea that it would take place. He was merely going there to get a drink. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Despair the Zero is saying that the Martian is the instigator of that event, someone pulling the strings, or if this is more of a comment on the nature of their universe. Remember that the Absolute Line's whole thing is that it is a universe created by Darkseid, and it is riddled with anti-life. Anti-life is the lack of control, the removal of choice and free will. But what seems to be the cruelest thing here is that if their lives are all following a script and they're marching to the beat of someone else's drum, then they have no idea. They all think they're in control of their own lives, but it's all predetermined. This is the other side of the philosophical argument that if we're all nothing, then that means we're all something. If we're all nothing and we have no say, then what are we but puppets? Not sure. I was absolutely certain that Jones had overcome his doubts and had become enlightened, but really, he opened his eyes to the horrible reality as described by Despair the Zero. This is Darkseid's world. He is God. Everything is awful, and there's nothing he or anyone else can do about it. The fact that the Martian had been trying to steer him all this time and potentially misled him about the nature of their relationship is troubling, though. Now, we could chalk this up to Despair the Zero embellishing some facts to make his negative perception of things more believable, but right now Jones can't face the possibility that he's following a script. And literally just saying that out loud, it dawns on me that this is all wonderfully meta. Of course he's following a script. He's a character in a story. He does what writer Deniz says he needs to do. So perhaps that's what Despair the Zero's talking about. To be honest, I don't know. At the same time, the Martian tries to improve their situation. Now that he's reunited with Jones, he's more powerful and he makes short work of the agency. They too can operate outside of the regular rules of reality, travelling through posters, for instance. But the Martian slaughters 2 of their members. He takes the red, white and blue trail from G-Man's metaphysical bullets, turns them into puppet strings and then forces him to execute himself. He also grants free thought to Rainbow's shadow soldiers, who immediately turn on him and gun him down. But there are casualties in this battle, as innocent bystanders are gunned down by someone? It's not clear who, because we're focused on Jones at the time and he was trying to fight off Despair the Zero. Did he shoot those civilians, or was it the agency? Despair the Zero rather frustratingly says yes and no. Although that does bring me to a novel moment, the series has been notable for how it uses the physical nature of comic books to enhance the experience. Things like holding up a page to a light source to get a complete image, for instance. And there's another one in this issue. Here, Despair the Zero instructs readers to take a pair of scissors and cut the bottom of the page off to remove the murder of the civilians if you really don't like it. Now, being one of those obsessive comic collector types who breaks out in a sweat when he sees someone rolling up a comic book, the idea of cutting something out of my comic makes me recoil in horror, and that's probably part of the point. Let me know if you decided to follow his instructions in the comments. I have a feeling that no one will. There is the possibility here that the civilians were caught in the crossfire between the agency and the Martian, or it may very well have been Jones when he hallucinated a confrontation with his former partner. Earlier issues mentioned how Jones had been reassigned to Middleton following allegations of corruption, and we get a small hint as to what was going on. His partner and mentor seemingly set him up, and appears to be the cause of a lot of his frustrations. He had never told his wife Bridget about any of this though, and that secret helped the White Martian drive a wedge between them. Bridget is fully under his influence and notes that she has never seen Tyler so lively, with his strange new friends sitting and talking with him all day, every day. But she knows that something is wrong. The windows don't open anymore, leading to a build-up of the mind-numbing smoke, and it looks like there's a huge crack in the sky, although it could just be in the window. It's then that inspiration strikes, courtesy of a plume of green smoke. Gee, I wonder who that could be. Bridget smashes a window and goes to find John, but when she comes across him, he is inconsolable. Despair the Zero revealed an awful secret. Tyler wasn't under the control of the White Martian. He was dead. He had been killed by the poisoned cookies, as we saw in issue 6. The White Martian is essentially wearing his skin, and they had no idea. The cracking that Jones had felt in his mind has now spread to the real world, as Despair the Zero reminds him of what the Martian had told him when they first met. What happens in your head happens in the real world too. With only one issue left, I really don't know how this is going to end, and perhaps that's a good thing, because Absolute Martian Manhunter has been one of the most unpredictable and exciting comics in a long time, and I shouldn't be able to see where it's going to go. I had thought we were heading towards a triumphant victory against the White Martian and Darkseid's ideology, but now I'm not so certain, and feel quite naive. Absolute Martian Manhunter 11 is available now from all good comic shops. I would encourage you to research your local comic shop, and if you don't have one, I'm certain there are dozens of good stores nearby that would be happy to mail you your comics. If you're opposed to the idea of cluttering up your home with comic books, then you can get this one digitally from places like Amazon as well as Neon Ishiban. Personally, I prefer physical comics, but I do like the convenience of having thousands of comic books accessible from my phone. But you do what works best for you. Cheap plug time, I'm currently running a competition where you could win one of 4 signed copies of Two-Face Trial Separation. Full details on how you can win can be found in last week's video, where I talked about a recent splurge I went on, tracking down Golden Age Two-Face comics. Check that out if you haven't already. I tried to do something a little different and, perhaps predictably, it didn't get much of a response. Next time, I'll be back shortly to discuss Barbara Gordon Breakout 1, where Batgirl finds herself locked up in Vandal Savage's Supermax prison, but she's not at all unhappy about it. This video is also going to outline some important changes coming to this channel, but don't worry, I think you'll like what we've got cooking. And after that, I'll be back to talk about Absolute Green Arrow number 1, which picks up after the Absolute Evil special, where Oliver Queen was brained to death by Hawkman after he tried to fight back against the corrupt elites. Now, a shadowy figure in a green hood and armed with a bow and arrow is murdering those same elites. And after that, I'll talk about Absolute Flash 15, where Wally West and Linda Park start their search for Ray Palmer within what remains of Star Labs. Hope to see you then.